Hello everyone, welcome to another Path of Exile video, and I did a thing that I said I wouldn't do like 2 videos ago, and that's invest a bunch of currency into my witch again. However, this time around it actually paid off. So as I've been leveling more and more characters, at this point I have an RF Chieftain, I have a Ranger Wander, and I have a Hierophant Frostbolt Totem guy. I've been acquiring more and more currency, and I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to spend that currency. Because the Frostbolt Totem Hierophant is pretty much a solo self-found character. I just want to see how far I can push him without using any uniques or investing any currency into him, because I wanted to see if it really is a good starter character as Lifting Nerd told me, and it is. He was right. It is a really good starter character because it does good damage even with crap gear that you just find lying around while you're leveling up and once you get into maps. And I think I will use that build as my league starter when the next league rolls around, because I would love to get into the whole league shenanigans. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked, so I didn't want to spend the currency on the Hierophant, and both the RF and the Wonder character have gotten to a point where scaling them any further would be very expensive. For the RF character, I would either have to get Combs Hard, which is like 4 exalts in standard, which for me personally is a lot, or I would have to get like Insanity Crafted Gloves with a good life roll and probably decent resistances, which would also be extremely expensive. And for the Wander, to get an upgrade over Piscators, I would have to spend a couple of exalts as well. So instead of just trying to hoard more and more currency so that I can eventually get an item that may not be as much of an upgrade as I think personally, because I still don't quite understand the way things scale in this game and how to properly scale things, because sometimes I get a really good item and I'm like, oh my god, this is going to be a massive DPS increase, and it actually ends up being worse than the item I'm currently wearing. So I've been trying to read about it a lot, but I still don't quite understand how everything works. I'm starting to get the hang of it, but I'm not going to spend like 4 or 5 exalts on an item that may end up actually being worse than what I'm currently wearing. Bloody hell, I'm rambling a lot today, aren't I? Let's stop that. So instead of investing the currency into those characters and possibly just wasting it, I decided to invest it back into my witch, because on top of getting a lot of currency that I can invest into the witch, I also got a lot of items that I wanted to use on the witch originally. Things like Boots of Ullr, I have no idea how you pronounce that, which gives you 1 more Spectre and Zombie, which is awesome. I also got like 3 Victario's Charities, which even though I'm not using right now, I will use eventually with Necromantic Aegis. I'm not using it right now because I feel the character is still a little bit too squishy to sacrifice an entire shield's worth of defense and give it to my minions, but once I do get, I think, like gloves and 1 ring, I will go into Necromantic Aegis and use Victario's Charity, which will give my minions basically permanent frenzy charges, which is a massive damage increase, and they will also get some power charges while I'm just clearing, going up to the boss, or maybe if the boss even spawns some ads, which is also a big damage increase, especially if you're using Frost Sentinels, because they have pretty good base crit as it is. Now the character is of course not complete yet. There is a lot of stuff I still want to do. I want to get better gloves with a good life roll. I want to get good rings with life rolls and some ES as well. I could get a lot better amulet as well, and I generally just want to level up a little bit. The character is level 87 right now, and I think I can push it to like 90, maybe 91 to pick up a couple of life and ES nodes that I'm very close to on the skill tree right now. Another nice thing would be a 6-link, because right now my Spectres are only 5-linked. I'm running Ray Spectre into minion damage, into Spell Echo, into Control Destruction, and then depending on the Sentinel, I'm running either LMP if I'm running Flame Sentinels, or Pierce if I find Frost Sentinels in the map, which I do prefer to the Flame Sentinels even though they have less AoE. They just have more crowd control and it just feels safer to play with those. It is kind of unfortunate that you can't get them at a decent level from the get-go, like Flame Sentinels, which you can get at level 68 in the the Templar Laboratory, as it is called today, because I think the highest level Frost Sentinels you can get are like level 60, and those feel pretty squishy, especially if you go into red maps. Now, as you can see on the screen right now, the single target damage isn't that great. It's actually pretty bad once you start getting into higher tier maps, like this one, which is a tier 10 port, or even like Underground River and stuff like that, but the single target damage is gonna go up quite significantly once I do go into Necromantic Aegis and I pick up Victario's Charity again. I think I should have recorded a couple of maps with Victario's Charity and Necromantic Aegis just to show you how much better the damage is, because on top of the frenzy charges giving your sentinels more cast speed, so they just cast faster, it also gives them a more damage multiplier per frenzy charge. And one thing I learned is that a more damage multiplier is a hell of a lot better than just an increased damage multiplier, because a more damage multiplier multiplies the entire damage number after it's been multiplied by the increased multiplier, which only multiplies the base, or something like that. See, this is why it took me a while to understand how things scale in this bloody game. The next map on the menu is an underground river, which is a red tier map, so we're getting into the high-end territory. And for whatever reason, I only did this map with 3 zombies. I originally thought the boss killed 6 of my zombies, but then I watched the video back and I went into the map with just 3 zombies, and I have no idea where I lost the other 6. But even with just 3 zombies, the map was a complete breeze. This is actually a map that I like an awful lot. It's very linear, and there aren't like too many walls and stuff that the minions can get stuck on, which is always good. So yeah, the character can do red tier maps even without Victario's Charity, but once again, the boss damage isn't the best. Also, for me, the clear speed is good enough. It's not Val Fireball or even Flicker Strike, but it is pretty good, especially if you keep up your flesh offering. Now, one thing I was really unsure about with this character was what kind of weapon I was going to use, and I ended up using the Scourge, which I bought for like 10 chaos. Now, I don't think I've seen a single minion monster use this weapon. I usually see people using it to buff themselves, because even though it does give your minion 70% increased damage if you've hit something recently, which is in the last 4 seconds, it takes all the minion damage multipliers and applies them to you as well, so you can get a pretty big damage increase from it. However, I'm only using it to buff my minions with 70% increased damage. But to get the multiplier, I have to hit things all the time, because it only lasts 4 seconds, so I'm using Arc, which is a link to faster casting and Culling Strike. Now, it would be better if I linked it to Curse on Hit and Elemental Weakness to buff my Spectre damage even more, but the cast speed on this build is very low, and it feels awful to use Arc without faster casting. It's also nice to have Culling Strike for bosses, which is basically an Execute. Also, and this is something that I didn't know for the longest time, and I felt really dumb when I finally realized it, you need some kind of a spell as a minion monster, because whenever you cast a spell, your minions will either attack the enemy that the spell hit, or they will go wherever your mouse cursor is when you cast the spell. So you actually use the spell to either target switch or to move your minions around. It is very damn important. Especially if you want to run Uberlab. What a transition. You want to use it to just move your minions out of traps so they're not face tanking them, which could end up being really bad, because if you lose a Spectre, you know, one of your Flame or Frost Sentinels in the Labyrinth, you can't just leave and get another one. You just have to get another Spectre, which is probably not going to be as good, because you cannot leave the Labyrinth. You have to do everything in one go. It's also important for target switching during the Izaro fight, because sometimes you want to kill Izaro no matter what. Sometimes you want to like kill the gargoyles and things like that, so it's very important there as well. And Uberlab was the thing I was most worried about with this character, because I remember doing normal, cruel and merciless lab and it not being particularly great before when I was still running SRS. There were multiple things that I was worried about. Number one, me dying, which is actually why I spec'd out of Necromantic Ages and I'm not using Victario's Charity at the moment. And number two, this was really spooky, losing Spectres to either Izaro or traps, which didn't happen. I went through the entire Uberlab and finally got my final ascension, and I lost 2 zombies on the final fight. And I think it was because they were getting smacked by Izaro while standing in traps. That was it. I lost 2 zombies, and the entire run was incredibly chill. And I didn't even go out of my way to get like a lot of the dark shrines, because I was so spooked about losing sentinels on traps. So I didn't have like the traps disabled, or at least have the shrine that gives you less damage taken from traps. I didn't have any of the buff shrines on me. It was nothing. I just had 1 shrine, which gave me an extra key when I killed Izaro. That was it. Though I did try to do the mechanics as well as I could, so Izaro wouldn't be crazily powered up at the end. And honestly, out of all the characters that I did Uberlab with, this was hands down the easiest Uberlab. Izaro basically felt like a low-tier map boss. I wasn't worried about anything. I did get cut by traps a little bit, which was a little bit spooky, but as I've said already, it felt like a low-tier map boss, though it may have had to do with the rotation today because it was conduits and portals, which is overall very easy to deal with. The damage, once again, wasn't the best, especially in the final phase, because there was a lot more targets for the minions to attack, so I constantly had to shepherd them with Arc to attack Izaro instead of the mobs that came out of the portals, but it was just fine. As I've said already, it felt really nice and chill. And here are all the goodies. I only had 3 keys, so there wasn't too much loot, and the loot was kind of crap. I got a couple of superior gems and few orbs here and there. But I feel far more confident now to do the Uberlab and maybe even spec into Necromantic Ages so that I can kill Izaro faster and finally start farming Uberlab, which is something I haven't really done, like, ever. And that's pretty much it for the video. I don't really want to show you the passive skill tree just yet because I'm still moving things around and kind of trying to figure out what feels best. But once that is done, I may do a video and kind of showcase the whole build and talk about it a little bit more once I maybe got it into even higher tier maps. But I think this is enough for now, so as always guys, I thank you very much for watching, and I will see you some other time. Bye bye.